Okay, welcome. This is week 4, class meeting, instructor meeting, whatever you want to call it. How did the exam go? Any thoughts on the exam?
It wasn't easy.
It wasn't easy.
No. I was terrified to take it. It was just as bad as I anticipated.
Well, at least you know you weren't paranoid about it, right? It was bad.
Actually, it probably was. Even though I studied for it, I just felt like, okay, I'm the point. I can't do much more.
Do you
So
think
I
it'll
sucked
help?
it up and took it anyway.
Do you think it'll help now having one under your belt when you go into the next one?
Yet my frustration with this class has been the textbook, I think, is just not really good as far as being able to locate information.
It's not. That's true. The index at the back helps, but not always.
I finally went and paid for it to be on my Kindle, and that helped a lot.
I bought the Kindle version and the hard copy, and I still struggle with
So,
the Kindle.
so the problem, this is where I will never, ever, ever, ever be an attorney because I'm like, this is dry. I need some drama in this book. I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is the driest read I have ever read in my life. I would
It's
make a terrible attorney.
That's
Yeah,
me.
yes,
I know right now I would never want to be an attorney.
there's. If you think this is dry, you should try law school reading.
No, like if I had any entertainment of being an attorney, there's just no way because I would rather stab myself in the eye with needles and watch paint dry than read this book over again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is a sitcom compared to a lot of this what we read in law school. So.
Bless you. Bless you. I hate it. I'm just like, oh.
Well, good. Good feedback. Thank you. The book is probably not the best there is, but the book is affordable. That's one of the reasons they chose this. The other previous instructors told me. Some of the other
It, you
books
know,
are $80, $100 a piece.
yeah, and it is, that I do like, but I just kind of feel like there has got to, even for a little bit of cost, there's got to be a better textbook because I just feel like there's too much legal jargon for this type of a beginner type class. And so I'm
I
like,
agree.
wait a minute, I need some more examples. I need like crayons and coloring books type stuff.
Yeah, I often feel like this textbook is way over my head. When I read chapter 4 and 5, I was able to find some of the answers. In fact, I hope we can go over some of the answers for the study guide. But going through it, there was stuff in there I thought, how in the world am I going to find these things? And you go Google it, and it's just way over the top. So it's very frustrating to work with it.
uh,
I,
Google
I
has been my best friend. It's really dumbed things down to where I'm like, oh, is that what they were talking about? I get it now.
Google can lead you even farther down into the swamp, or it can clarify depending on the results
Right.
you find.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good feedback. I'll take that back. I'll make a suggestion for a new textbook if they can find one.
I
That's
would certainly rather have something from McGraw-Hill where you've got something Connect, you can go in and work on Connect and get your work done that way to be able to have better understanding of it than using this book. This book to me is one I would not ever want to buy ever again. It's so frustrating to use.
yeah,
Oh.
it's more of a quick reference than it is a textbook per se, and
Yep.
it says that on
Yep.
the cover. So,
Yeah. I mean,
and
I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, but boy, it's dry. But I
really
mean,
close to the worst thing.
it's close. I mean,
Worst.
watching paint dry would be slightly more entertaining, but it's not supposed to be entertaining. I mean, it's a textbook. So, I mean, and I took the exam and I was terrified, but I really thought that I could at least, thankfully, we could use the internet. And so I was able to search through my book and it was manageable. It was manageable. So,
Well, I
Kathleen,
found some of the questions that were on the exam. I thought, how am I going to find these even if I do an internet search? Because, okay, I could pick out certain keywords, but not all of them were that clear cut.
you weren't quite sure what to search for. In other words,
Exactly.
question.
it was very frustrating to go through it. And obviously I didn't do as well as I wanted to do. I got a passing grade. I'm content with that. I'll be really just content to have this behind me and be done. So I can say, okay, I can tick that off my box, because after I this class and the other one I'm doing, I only have 10 classes to graduate. But, you know, I have postponed this class for so long because I have dreaded it so much. You know, I was warned before I took it, it was not going to be an easy class. And I thought, oh my.
But luckily, we have a great instructor who holds these meetings and really helps to make it understable. Thank you.
That is a huge help.
I hope so. That's what I'm here for. I hope I can. Let's go ahead and get into it. We can go over any questions you have on this reading here. And if you're studying for the test and have any questions, send me a text or an email. I'll be happy to try to clarify. Text I usually respond to right away. Emails, you know, late that night after my kids are in bed. Yeah. So now that the exam is closed, you have a chance to submit an appeal. And those instructions are in the intro section to the course. And you have two options, just as a review. You can submit what's called a motion to dismiss, and that's just a brief paragraph stating, I know what I did wrong, I accept my fate, and I don't want to appeal. And that gets you 4 points. So that will up your exam grade by 4 percentage points right there. If you want more than 4, you can submit a full appeal. And you can pick any 5 questions that you missed, and you can either make an argument for why the question was misleading. You can make an argument that your answer should have been right as well. Or I'm okay if you even explain the process where you did the research and discovered why your answer was wrong and explain what it should have been. So the idea isn't that you have to find a flaw in the test. It's that you go through the process of going through the question again and researching and finding out why you were wrong and what the answer should have been. If you explain that process to me, I'll give you points as well. And
that's another thing I'm frustrated with, is appealing. I don't understand the concept. I don't understand what I'm doing. The amicus brief was another thing. I didn't understand what in the world I was supposed to be doing. I took a stab at it. I don't think I did as well as I could have done, but because this is all so new and I've never had anything to do with business law before, it's like it's going right over the top of my head.
I'm hoping that it won't continue to do that, hopefully, as you get in and get used to it. This first part is a little tough. Some of the stuff to come is easier stuff. As you get more into things that relate to business. Like, I think it may not seem right now, but the contract stuff is a little bit easier because there's less of it and it's more settled and it's more familiar because we all entered into contracts in our lives. Yeah. But anyway, so the appeal, those are your options. You have a motion to dismiss and a full appeal. The full appeal gets you 4 points automatically, plus up to 4 points per question for those 5 questions. But if you go ahead and pick 5 questions, do a thorough examination of why you got it wrong, or let me know why your answer should have been right, then you can help your exam score quite a bit. Because we know the exams are hard and we know it's new. So I'd encourage you to do that. Kathleen, if you're worried about the appeal, if you want to try one question and send it to me early, I'll let you know if that's a good appeal on that question, then you'll have a chance to do the remaining questions if you'd like.
Okay.
I'm happy to do that for any of the students who want. Watch, I'll get 50 of them. If I do, I'll show some examples and I'll show whether it's a good or not. So if you're worried about that, send that so you have I have a day to look at it, and then I'll get it back to you, and you can go ahead and say and adjust your other ones based on that. Because I don't want it to be hard. I want it to be something that is useful to go back and review. And say, okay, this should have been that, and here's why I found it. This is how I was wrong. This is what I should have done.
I know I'm finding it challenging because this is just not my joyful spot in life. It's just like, oh.
Well, maybe we can help you find your happy spot. Maybe it's the Civil Rights Act, or maybe it's at-will employment, or something down the road. So something will be your happy spot.
I hope so, because for me, this has just been the hardest class I've ever taken. Because like it's been said, it's not necessarily the easiest thing to read and to understand and comprehend it. I'm finding it really difficult. In fact, last week I came very close to dropping it, even though I thought, no, I better hang on.
I hope you hang on. If it makes you feel any better, I didn't fail anybody last semester.
That's comforting.
Even those that really struggled, they all ended up passing with the extra and with the dropped exams and so on. Everybody did okay. They ended up passing the class.
But you're one of the reasons I retook this class, because having had contact with you in fall semester, I knew what I was getting into for an instructor. So I thought, okay, I'm going to make it through this, but it's still really
no pressure on me or anything.
Oh no, not at all. It's just I knew who I was talking to, and that makes it a little bit different.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. I hope I live up to your expectations.
I just know when you look at the register list and you see these names, you're thinking, so who is that?
Yeah, stuff, especially online, because you can't just talk to people usually that have taken this, because most of our students aren't there on campus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's move in then to the material. You guys said you had some questions. Anything in particular at the beginning you'd like me to go over?
Yes.
Okay.
In the reading, it says, going to have to cover the screen a little bit to be able to read this.
Okay.
What are the requirements for a legally valid acceptance? And I thought there was something on page 103 about it, but I just didn't really quite get it.
Okay. Just read through what the book says here. Okay, so there are a couple of things. It is on 103, you're right. So in the first paragraph, acceptance must be clear and unqualified. So if I come to you and say, hey, I will pay you $15, will you mow my lawn? I'm making an offer. If your acceptance is yes, that's clear and it's unqualified. If your acceptance is, how about for $20? That's not unqualified. There's a qualification there. If I say yes for $20, I'm making a counter offer. It's not an acceptance at that point. Does that make sense? You have to accept the terms as given and not make any changes. So that's what it means by unqualified. And second, you have to accept the offer in the manner required. So if I were to say, show up at my house at 5 o'clock if you want to mow my lawn for $15, and you show up at 3, that's not according to the requirements, and so that's not a valid acceptance. Does that make sense? So it has to be, you can't make any other changes in the offer, and you have to accept in the manner specified. Does that help a little bit?
I didn't get all that. I'm sitting here trying to type it as you talk, but
okay. Well, better let me talk. You can go back and watch the meeting and type it later.
That's true. So if it's qualified, that means you accept it as it is?
Yep. So I can't come back and make a counteroffer for $20. That's not an acceptance because I've changed the terms of the offer. And then if I specify that you have to show up at 5 o'clock to mow my lawn and you show up at 3, that's also not valid because you didn't accept in the manner that I specified.
Okay.
So whether it's valid depends on what the offer is exactly.
Okay.
So the method of acceptance will vary based on what the offer says, but it has to be clear and it has to be in accordance with the offer.
The other one, a couple other ones is, how can you tell if a contract has consideration?
Sometimes it's hard, honestly. Just think of consideration as something required of both sides. So, and it can be anything. In our example, if I say, will you mow my lawn for $15? You say yes. My consideration is giving you $15. What's your consideration?
All right.
It's mowing my lawn.
And then,
so each side gives something. So it can
mowing
be
the lawn.
Yeah, that's your consideration. So if I say, I'm going to make cupcakes for you, and you say, okay, I've offered consideration, but you haven't. because you're not agreeing to do anything or not do anything. You're just acknowledging my statement. So, but if I say, hey, I've got these cupcakes here, will you clean my room if I give you cupcakes? In that case, I've given consideration, and you have as well. You're going to clean my room. That's your consideration. I'm going to give you cupcakes. So that consideration could be just something given or some action taken by both sides.
So is that along the lines of like a unilateral contract and a bilateral contract, or is that something totally different?
A little bit. A bilateral contract, the consideration is usually spelled out ahead of time. Mm. So party A will do this and party B will do that. Mm-hmm. A unilateral contract, I say, hey, first person in my house tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock gets $50.
Okay.
I don't know that there's going to be consideration until you show up.
Okay.
And the consideration and the performance are right together.
Okay. That makes sense.
So it is a little bit related.
Another one was, when can a person recover from the doctrine of promissory estoppel?
Okay. That is along the lines of, I'm trying to think of a good example, because examples tend to help. It's when I've made a promise. For example, I'm a grandfather, I promised my grandson, son, you get into college, I'm going to pay for your first year's tuition. You go, all right, Grandpa, and you work hard and get into college. I go, oh, son, I lost it all in Vegas. I don't have any money. But the grandson's bought books. He's moved or something. He's acted on the basis of the grandfather's promise. So even though the grandfather can't, there was no official contract there. Promissory estoppel says, hey, the grandson took action based on your promise. You can't get out of it now because your grandson's worse off because he trusted you. And so the courts are going to say, you still owe him that first year's tuition because he took action and he incurred costs because you'd made that promise. Even though there wasn't an official contract, you relied on your promise, and can't be made whole unless we hold you to that contract. So that's promissory estoppel. Estoppel simply means that you're stopped from doing something. Because you made a promise, you're stopped from backing out of it, basically, if the other party acts based on that promise. The grandfather was assuring him all along, yeah, I'll have the money, go ahead. Good job. Oh, you graduated high school, that's great. You applied to college, you doing good? Oh, sorry, I don't have the money. And there's no real contract there, but the courts can say, well, look at all the actions he took based on that promise. And he can't get back to where he was before without us holding you to that promise.
A couple of misrepresentation ones I couldn't find was negligent and innocent misrepresentation. Okay. I did look for them, but I was not able to find them.
Yeah, those are all similar, as you might guess. Fraudulent misrepresentation, that's, I just flat out lie to you about something. Negligent misrepresentation is I should have taken the time to find out. Say I'm selling you a house, and you ask me, well, does it have asbestos in it? Like, no, but I've never checked. I'm not intentionally deceiving you. I didn't go through the proper steps that I should have done to find out. And if it turns out it does have asbestos, then that's negligent misrepresentation on my part. Innocent misrepresentation, kind of a similar situation. I'm selling a house, and you ask me, well, are all of the beams intact? And I don't know, so I hire an architect, and he tells me, yeah, they're all intact. So I go, okay, yeah, they're intact. And it turns out they're not. I did my due diligence. I did what I had to do to find out, but it turns out I was wrong. It wasn't my fault, but I was wrong. So I'm innocent. It is a misrepresentation, but it's innocent on my part. Does that help?
Yeah.
Good.
Well, what about capacity?
Capacity. Let's see. Share another screen. Some people are legally incapable of making contracts, and some of the other things on the list fall under the broad heading of capacity. If you're a minor, you aren't legally capable of making a contract.
Okay.
If you're not sane, you're not capable. Both of those are flavors, if you will, of capacity. So you don't have, I guess another would be you don't have the authority to bind a company in a contract. So you don't have the capacity that you need to actually bind the company into a contract because you're just the janitor. You're not the president or anything.
Another one was parole evidence rule, and what does it prevent?
Well, what that is if we have a contract, a written contract, and it does have to be written. And there's a dispute of some kind, we go to court. The parole evidence rule says that I can't say, oh, well, but in the contract, we talked about it, and we also agreed to this, but we didn't write it down. The parole evidence rule says I can't bring that evidence in because we had a written contract. It's assumed that the written contract covers everything. There weren't side oral agreements that we didn't put into writing. There are some exceptions to that, but basically it says if you take the time to write your contract down, that's the whole contract. You can't come back later and say, oh, remember when we talked and agreed about this other thing? That's not fair. That's changing the contract. So the parole evidence rule said that evidence is not admissible in a breach of contract dispute.
Okay.
Parole is another word for oral evidence.
Huh.
I don't know if it's Latin or what it is, but that's straight from my contract professor's mouth.
Wow.
So,
I've never known that. That's interesting to hear that comment because that wasn't something I was familiar with.
yeah, it's not.
I would never have looked under that term.
Yeah, parole has a different meaning in most people's minds. So.
I thought it was like some type like a parole board, or you've been paroled, or.
Yeah, no. It's all it means is you can't have. There's no evidence of oral agreements that can override or change a written contract. So the written contract is presumed to be the whole agreement.
Can we talk about third parties having contract rights?
Yeah, usually they don't unless it's explicitly in the contract, and it's usually not intended. But if I say, okay, I am going to, I'm trying to think of a good example. Is there an example in the book? Because it is unusual that third-party contracts have third party. Hold on, I'm just going to look here in the index. What page that's on? I just want to find and see if they have an example that I can work off of. I should get the Kindle version too.
I don't. It's fabulous.
The Kindle version up if that helps.
152 beneficiaries. Okay. 152 is where they have it.
Oh.
Okay, third party. Okay. Okay, so for example, if I owe you $1,000 and I agree to pay that, I say, well, instead of the $1,000, can I have my buddy, pave your driveway for you in payment of my debt? Then you, and if Z agrees to that, if my buddy agrees to that, you can then sue him. Like the idea that I now have a contract with my buddy. Hey, I'll do something for you if you'll pay off my debt by paving this driveway. You're a third party to our agreement. Me and my buddy have this agreement that he's going to pay off my debt for me. You're not mentioned in the agreement, but if he doesn't do it, you can sue him for it. So you're a third party beneficiary. You're not in our contract, me and my buddy here, but you have rights because he was supposed to do that action to benefit our contract. If That makes sense. So you're not mentioned in our contract, but you are a third party and you have rights.
Yeah.
So a similar one is somebody agrees to pay a mortgage or co-sign a loan. You know, there's an agreement between those two, and the bank's not involved, but the bank can sue the other person based on that other contract. So those are intentional third-party beneficiaries, and that's not terribly common. It does happen. More commonly, there are incidental beneficiaries. You know, say I hire a landscaping company to trim my trees. As a result, you know, the fruit and the leaves don't fall on my neighbor's yard as much. If then, you know, that company doesn't come and breaches the contract with me, my neighbor can't sue and say, hey, I got all this stuff on my lawn now. You guys got to keep trimming the trees, because he's an incidental beneficiary. It was not intended that he benefit at all. It just happened that it helped him keep his yard clean. But he doesn't have any rights under the contract because it was incidental to the purpose of the contract, if that makes sense.
Okay. Another one that I'm not sure I would find would be conditions precedent, concurrent, or subsequent.
Okay.
I think that would be kind of a maze in Google.
Yes, that will get you down. Okay, let's find what that is. All right, my alphabetizing brain is not working. Okay, so that's 158 roughly. Yeah, 159.
So some of these answers aren't necessarily in the two chapters we read yet, is what I'm getting.
Let's see, this is in chapter. Yeah, this. Yeah, I don't know. Is that on the study
I'm
guide?
Chapter 8 under discharges, damages, and other remedies.
Yeah, it is in chapter 8. I don't see those on this. Oh, there they are. Performance, discharge, and remedies. I wonder if that's the reading for next week. I wonder if that's the week 5 reading.
Oh, it might be.
I hope so. If not, then oops. It's like the first study guide didn't include chapter 19. This one maybe
Right.
off as well. Check that quick. Makes sense, because that's, you know, it goes right along with contracts. So week 5. Preparation. Yeah, chapters 6, 7, and 8 are the reading for next week.
Oh.
So if you want to wait and do that next week.
Okay, that's why we didn't find it this week.
Yeah, so if you want to stay on 4 and 5, that's the top part of the study guide. Formation, consideration, non-contracts, and defenses, I think. But I can talk about it if you'd like.
Yeah, it'd be great if you would.
A good example of conditions precedent is in a mortgage. If you go to sell your house, you take out a mortgage, and the mortgage is conditional on you being able to sell your old house, for example. That's a condition precedent to the actual mortgage taking effect. If that doesn't happen, then the rest of the contract doesn't happen. That makes sense. Or it may be conditional on you being, the sale of the house may be conditional on the buyer getting financing. That's a condition that has to happen before the sale is complete.
Okay.
That's a condition precedent. That's the most common one that we see.
It's interesting to hear. We just sold a home at the end of summer.
Okay.
And we actually went through some of those exact situations where we had a couple buyers we thought were going to go through and they couldn't do what they needed to do. So.
Yep, and therefore the sale didn't happen. The conditions precedent were not satisfied. So, yep, that's the real world example that most people run into at some point.
So what would concurrent and subsequent conditions be?
Concurrent are less common. It's usually something, again, to use the home analogy. When the sale price is tendered, we will tender the deed. those conditions have to take place at the same time. You can't send me the money and I wait and wait and wait and wait. That would void the sale. You know, if it's in the contract that says these two things have to happen at the same time, that's a condition concurrent.
Can you go to title and escrow?
So essentially you're saying if you go to title and escrow, you get your money that day and they have to do it the same day.
If that's what's specified in the contract, yes, then that would be a concurrent condition. And if not, then that stops the remainder of the sale. But again, that's all up to what you put in the contract. You don't have to do it that way. But that's a common way that it's done. So, okay, I give you the goods, you give me the money, same time, conditions concurrent.
Okay.
And then subsequent.
Deal.
My husband's sitting here chuckling and saying, like your secret deal.
The one you did, the spice.
Yeah, exactly.
Knows not about.
Oh.
A condition subsequent may say, okay, this contract, the sale is done unless you give me notice within 30 days that the goods, there's something wrong. So the sale's finished, but there's still this possibility for a period of time that there could be something happen that would void it, go back and cancel it. So, you know, typically you sign up for a free trial of an online service and say, okay, we won't charge your card for 30 days, as long as you cancel before. So the sale's done, you're signed up, you use the service, there's still that possibility in 30 days you could cancel, and then you don't owe it. That's a condition subsequent to the actual closing of the deal. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, so does that mean it's only the buyer that can void that on this one?
Not always. Most commonly it's the buyer, because the seller usually has more experience and more power in the transaction. But you could try to imagine a scenario where the seller would maybe I have an invention I want to sell, and the owner of Walmart says, hey, yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll market your stuff in our stores. And but I put a condition in there. I say, okay, but if you don't sell 10,000 of them in the first month, then all bets are off and I can take it somewhere else. So I'm the seller, Walmart's the buyer. They have to meet their condition, otherwise I can pull out. That would be a condition subsequent where the seller has the option. How am I doing so far?
Pretty darn good. There's one right below that. That one was excuse of performance for impossibility or commercial impracticability.
Okay. On impossibility is the classic example is I agree to sell you my house. We come to an agreement. We're all ready to make the sale, and a tornado destroys the house. What are you buying? What am I selling? It's not possible to perform the transaction anymore. It makes no sense because there's no goods. In that case, I don't have to sell you the house. You don't have to pay me. You just kind of walk away from it because it's not possible to do.
Okay.
Commercial impracticability is something similar in a business sense. You know, I promised to sell you 500 bushels of apples. A frost wipes out all the apples that I can possibly buy. I can't get them. Look, I can get 100. That's all I can get. It's not possible. Nobody has 500 bushels of apples anywhere. So, you can sue me all you want, but you're not going to get your apples. Let's just walk away from this thing. I'll give you your money back, and it's commercially impracticable to do. Sure, I could buy them from Australia and import them, but 15 times the cost. But it would bankrupt me, and you get them late, and it's just not good. And usually that's a mutual decision on those. So everyone looks at it and says, yeah, this just isn't going to work. Does that help on that?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, there's still some more terms here, but I think some of them, not having read those chapters for next week, might be clearer once I read it.
Yeah, let's go to those next week. There are a few things I wanted to point out in the first part, at least, that are a little bit tricky. We already went over bilateral and unilateral a little bit. the most common contracts are bilateral. I agree to this and this. We both know up front, and we both perform. Unilateral contract is more along the lines of, hey, first person to come shovel my walk in the morning gets $20.
Right.
I don't know who the other party is. I don't know if anybody's going to accept it at all. But they don't come up and accept. They come up, shovel the walk. They perform, and that creates the contract. The performance and the contract formation are at the same time in a unilateral contract. Bilateral contracts formed, and we perform sometime later. So that's the difference there. That one can be a little bit tricky. Void and voidable. There is a question on the final on avoidable, or not on the final, on this next exam, on a voidable contract. So a void contract is just one that is never made. It's illegal, or there's some other reason that both parties, either party can leave the contract. It's not possible to form a contract. A voidable contract is binding on one party but not the other. The classic example is a contract with a minor. If I make a contract with a 14-year-old and he performs, I am bound to pay him because I'm an adult. I have the capacity to contract. The minor, he doesn't have to perform. He can just walk away from the contract if he wants. He can perform if he wants and he can get paid, or he can just walk away and I can't sue him for breach of contract because it's voidable on his side. Not on mine, but it is on his.
Okay.
Those aren't terribly common, but you do run into them sometimes. But that's the difference. A void contract is a contract that can never be formed. It can never be performed. I hire a hitman to kill somebody. That's an illegal act. That's a void contract. I can't come and say, hey, he didn't do it. Although there was a case in Utah not long ago where somebody did try to sue their hitman for not performing, for taking the money and bailing.
Not seriously.
They tried. They got arrested for hiring a hitman, obviously, in attempted murder. But they did try. Yeah, just a couple of towns over from where I live. I was like, oh, that's that's a void contract.
That's awesome.
I'll have to go look up it on KSL and see what they've got on it. That's funny.
Yeah, it was a few years ago. I want to say it was in Riverdale was the city. I want to see that's where it was. They called the police and complained that the hitman had taken the money and run.
That's
They
fabulous.
think, I wanted 10 pounds of marijuana from that guy, gave him the money, and he just took off. You file that in court, you're not going to get anywhere with that. It's void.
You might get somewhere. I mean,
yeah, you would get
arrested, and, searched, but
jail, exactly. So that's void. There's no contract there because you can't contract for illegal acts.
I'm never gonna forget those now, like ever. Good job.
All right. Yeah, so those are void. Voidable is, I hire somebody who has the option of not performing, like a minor. I'm bound, he's not.
Okay.
Advertisement is an offer. I run into this in my day job at RC Willie a lot. Well, not me personally, but I sit across the cubicle from our customer relationship. And we'll occasionally post a price online that's just wrong. We typo the price. So $600 couch is $69. People get online, they order like 20 of them, and then they call us up. No, that was an offer. I accepted your offer. You have to pay me. You have to give me the couches. We go, no, an offer is not an acceptance, or an advertisement, sorry, is not an offer. That was an advertisement. It's not an offer. You can't accept it. We're not bound. There's no contract. And then they yell and threaten to send us nasty legal letters, and they never do. Because no lawyers make it.
That's our presentation this week. And so we've had a lot of fun with the Pepsi, Yeah,
the Harrier jet and the Pepsi.
Yes. So that's been a ton of fun to learn about, is the offer.
Yeah. So there are just a couple of cases where an offer I keep messing that up, where an advertisement can be considered an offer. It has to be, just looking at this. It's an offer if it is specific to an identified person. Again, back to the snow shoveling example. I want first person to show up in our store on this day gets this. That person can be identified at some point. He can accept that contract because rather than just, hey, come, we have this for this amount of money. Who are we aiming that at? There's no way for anyone to tell if they're the target of the offer. So it has to be aimed at a specific person. Basically, it's a unilateral contract. If the offer, or sorry, I did it again. If the advertisement is specific enough that someone can accept it and form a unilateral contract, then it will be construed as an offer. If it's just a general, here's our price for this, it's just an advertisement, not an offer. Let's see, option contract. This isn't confusing now, but maybe later on when we talk about what's called a merchant's firm offer. An option contract is basically, and with the home buying example, if you go ahead and make an offer, you may want to put down some earnest money. What that is you're creating an option contract. I'll give you $200 if you'll promise to hold this open for me alone and not take any other offers while I get financing or whatever it is. So I pay for the other party to keep the offer open for a while. That's an option contract. It's kind of a
Can I give a good example of that?
Mm-hmm. What was that?
Can I give a good example of that? When we sold our house, before the people who were interested in purchasing the house, they were required, even though some of those sales didn't go through, they were required to put down their earnest money. In our case, the money was returned to them because they couldn't meet the contract. Finally, when the real purchaser went to purchase it, she was required to put down earnest money and did not get it back. It went into part of the proceeds of the sale.
Yeah, that's exactly it. They gave you earnest money for you to not accept any other acceptances for a while. And yep, so that's exactly it. That's an option contract. See, you just don't know some of these things. It's just you don't know the legal terms for them.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yep. I think the rest of this, we've done defenses to formation. Most of those are pretty straightforward. We went through the various types of misrepresentation. I don't think that the statute of frauds requirements for writing is in this section. So we'll go over that next time. Any other specific questions on the first part of the Unit 4 study guide?
One of the ones that always confuses me, even in when we were looking at the last units, was intoxication.
Mm-hmm.
It just is really fuzzy in my mind. I know what it is. I know it's illegal if you do an illegal act, but I'm not quite sure where legally these terms are heading into it.
Okay. In the case of contracts, intoxication, there are two types. There's voluntary intoxication, which doesn't excuse you from anything. But there's involuntary too. You have a bad medical reaction to medication. Somebody slips you a roofie. You're still intoxicated, but if somebody got you to sign a contract while you had been drugged by someone else, you can get out of it because of intoxication. If you're just drinking on your own and go and sign the contract, you're still bound. So in this case, it's involuntary intoxication that excuses you from performance, not voluntary intoxication. And it doesn't have to be alcohol. It can be anything that's impairing your judgment. It can be drugs. It can be prescription medication. It can be just a temporary something, lack of sleep probably would qualify in some cases. But again, if it's voluntary, then you can't get out of it just because you got drunk before you signed the contract. You can get out of it if you had a bad reaction to a new prescription and didn't realize it. So that's an intoxication defense, and that's not just contracts. That in torts as well, you can use that defense if you're involuntarily intoxicated. Other areas of the law as well, because you don't have.
There's one right below it.
Yeah, if you're intoxicated, you don't have. Yeah, intoxication kills off the capacity. You don't have the capacity if you're intoxicated.
Oh.
It says requirements of forms and writings.
Yeah, I think we'll go over that next week. We did the
Okay.
prologue rule, but that's in one of the upcoming chapters. Basically, there are
Okay.
certain times a contract must be in writing for you to enforce it in court. And one of the most prominent ones is the sale of land. So real estate contracts have to be in writing to be enforced. That's why all mortgages have tons of paperwork.
Okay.
And you can't just have a verbal agreement to sell your property and then go and say, hey, well, he told me he was going to sell the property. The court won't enforce it. Where's your writing? Where's your written contract? There are a few others, contracts that will take more than a year, and contracts for the sale of goods over $500. If you want to enforce those in court, you have to have a written contract.
Oh.
So, yeah, but we'll talk more about that next week. Sorry I've kept you guys a while. Anything else I can answer quick before we sign off? All right, if not, then I thank you all for coming. I'll post this recording up there so you can go back and take notes. And next week, remind me of the things you wanted to go over and keep any of your questions for chapters 6, 7, and 8 next week. So thank you all, and we'll see you later.
Yeah, thanks for your
Thank you.
time.
Thanks for going over